Yesterday, we went inside the machine, the grades, the tree of life, the abyss, the system Crowley spent his life building, and that serious practitioners across multiple traditions still use today. There is one more thing. Because after Crowley built the most rigorous, demanding, carefully designed magical system in Western occultism, he did something that nobody in the tradition had ever done before. He published the secrets. Not his own secrets. Everyone's secrets. The Golden Dawn's initiation ceremonies, word for word. The passwords. The ritual scripts. The inner order documents that senior members had sworn in the most serious possible terms never to reveal. He put them in a journal called the Equinox and sold it in bookshops. And in doing that, he didn't just build a system. He broke open the entire tradition and handed it to anyone who wanted it. That is how Crowley Week ends. Not with a legend, not with the wickedest man in the world. With a single act that changed Western occultism permanently, and that almost nobody talks about when they talk about Aleister Crowley. Section 1. What the Golden Dawn had built. To understand what Crowley did, you have to understand what the Golden Dawn's secrecy was protecting. The Order had spent decades assembling a curriculum. It drew on every significant source in the Western esoteric tradition: Kabbalah, Hermeticism, astrology, tarot, geomancy, Enochian magic, Egyptian mythology, and more. It synthesized these into a coherent grade-based system with documents, rituals, and knowledge papers assigned to specific levels of initiation. The documents were remarkable. The cipher manuscripts that formed the Order's founding text. The initiation rituals for each grade. Elaborate and carefully constructed ceremonies that used dramatic staging, specific symbolism, and psychological pressure to produce genuine initiatory experiences. The knowledge papers covering each area of magical study in depth that no comparable published material could match. Access to this material was controlled carefully. You earned the right to each document by advancing through the grades. And you swore, at each advance, not to share what you had received with anyone outside the Order. The system was designed so that the material could not be reproduced without the context of initiation. The argument was that reading the ritual for a ceremony was not the same as experiencing it. The secrets were protected not just by oaths, but by the claim that they were only meaningful inside the system that gave them life. Crowley accepted that argument for a while. Then he stopped. Section 2. His argument for publication. Crowley's stated argument for publishing the Golden Dawn material was straightforward. The Golden Dawn no longer existed in any meaningful sense. The organization had collapsed. Its leadership was scattered. The legitimate transmission of the material through proper initiation was no longer functioning. The documents were sitting in private collections, slowly becoming inaccessible, while the system they supported decayed. Publishing them preserved them. It made them available to serious students who had no other means of access. It prevented the tradition from dying inside the ruins of an organization that had already failed. There was a second argument, less publicly stated but visible in his correspondence. The secrecy itself was the problem. Crowley believed that occultism had spent centuries hiding behind initiatory gatekeeping that served organizational power more than genuine transmission. The secrets were secret, not because secrecy was spiritually necessary, but because controlling access to secret knowledge was how organizations maintained authority over their members. Publishing everything broke that mechanism. If anyone could read the rituals, the passwords, the initiation ceremonies, then the Golden Dawn's surviving factions could no longer claim special authority over material that was now public. He was dismantling a power structure as much as publishing a journal. Section 3. The Court Case. The surviving Golden Dawn factions did not accept this quietly. When Crowley published the Adeptus Minor ceremony, the initiatory ritual at the innermost core of the Golden Dawn's tradition, they went to court. They sought an injunction to stop publication, arguing that the material was their intellectual property and that its release violated the oaths members had sworn. The judge ruled against them. His finding was precise, and for the history of Western occultism, consequential. Occult oaths, he ruled, were not legally enforceable contracts, and the material, once written down, was subject to ordinary copyright considerations rather than oath-based suppression. The Golden Dawn could not use the law to protect its secrets. Crowley published the issue. Section 4. What it changed permanently. Before the equinox, access to serious initiatory material required access to a functioning secret society. You needed to find a lodge, be accepted, advance through the grades. If you lived in the wrong city, knew the wrong people, or could not navigate the social requirements of secret society membership, the tradition was simply not available to you. After the equinox, that was over. Subsequent generations of practitioners, people who would never have found a functioning order, who lived in isolated areas, who came from backgrounds that closed the doors of esoteric societies to them, had direct access to the foundational documents of the Western tradition. And the argument that this access was meaningless without initiatory context turned out to be only partially true. Some things require experience. Some things can be transmitted on a page. The equinox demonstrated, over the generations of practitioners it produced, that more could travel through print than the secret societies had wanted to believe. Here's the closing thought on Crowley Week. Crowley is remembered as a provocateur, a scandal, a villain, a legend, the wickedest man in the world. The man who did things in Sicilian farmhouses that got him expelled from Italy. The man with the frightening book and the disturbing ideas. What he actually was, stripped of all of that, was a man who decided that the tradition he had received was too important to stay locked inside institutions that were failing it. He built the most rigorous system in Western occultism, and then handed the keys to anyone who wanted them. The equinox is still in print. The AA is still operating. The material he released is now the foundation of contemporary Western occultism worldwide, and the power structures he dismantled have never fully reassembled. That is the real legacy of Aleister Crowley, not the wickedest man in the world, the man who opened the door and refused to close it.